At 10:47 p.m., Elias Haddad took his Canadian citizenship photo off the wall of his barbershop and felt, for the first time in 34
Mr.
years,
Haddad?
like a man erasing himself.
Yes.
The frame left a pale rectangle on the faded paint, cleaner than everything around it. He stood there with the photo in his hand, staring at his younger
It's
face,
safe.
the black
It's safe.
hair, the straight
Thank you,
shoulders,
Sophia.
the
God
hopeful
bless you.
eyes of a Lebanese
I don't
immigrant who had
understand. Why
arrived
was
in
this
Canada
hidden?
at 26
Your
with
mother,
one
she
suitcase,
didn't want you to see this until
$87,
now.
and a pair
She
of
must have
barber
known the
shears
time
wrapped
was
in a
right.
towel. Outside,
Time for a
November
new
snow
chapter,
moved
Dad.
across Wyandotte Street in thin white
Thank
lines.
you, Daniel.
The city of Windsor was
This is the
quiet,
truth,
except
Haddads.
for the low hum of traffic heading toward the Detroit Tunnel. Inside the shop, everything had already been packed or sold. The waiting chairs were gone. The old magazines were gone. Only the brown barber chair remained, bolted to the floor like it refused to accept the end. Elias turned the sign from open to closed, though no customer had come in after dark for years. Tomorrow morning, Langford Urban Renewal would take possession of the building. By noon, the sign that said Haddad's Barbershop would be pulled down and tossed into a truck like scrap wood. His son Daniel said it was time. His doctor said it was time. Even the bank had said it in polite letters with numbers Elias did not want to read twice. He placed the citizenship photo in a cardboard box beside Sophia's old coffee cup, then reached for the light switch. That was when someone knocked 3 times on the glass door. Not hard. Not desperate. Certain. Elias froze. Through the blinds he saw a woman standing under the street lamp, snow gathering on the shoulders of her dark coat. She held a manila envelope against her chest like it was the only warm thing she owned. Elias did not move. The woman lifted one hand and pressed a photograph to the glass. The face in the picture was older than Elias remembered, but the eyes were the same. Fard Rahman. Elias felt the shop tilt around him. 25 years vanished in one breath. He opened the door only a few inches. The woman looked at him and said, "I'm not here for a haircut. I'm here because my father disappeared. After leaving this shop." Elias tried to speak, but his throat had closed. She stepped closer, her voice low and steady. "Before my father died, he told me one thing. Find the barber who kept the light on after midnight." Elias looked past her to the empty street, then back at the photograph shaking in his own hand. "And then she said the sentence my dead wife warned me I would hear one day." Nadia stepped inside without brushing the snow from her coat, and the cold came with her. Elias closed the door, turned the lock, and immediately regretted the sound it made. In an empty barbershop at night, a lock sounded too much like a decision. The woman stood near the brown chair but did not sit down. Her eyes moved across the room with the careful attention of someone trained to notice what other people tried to hide. The cracked mirror. The bare hooks where framed licenses used to hang. The cardboard boxes beside the counter. The old floor vent near the back wall. "Your name is Elias Haddad," she said. "You came to Canada from Lebanon in 1984. You opened this shop in 1990.
Mr.
My
Haddad?
father came here in October of 1999. Elias kept one hand on the counter. "Many men came here. Not many left your address written inside their coat lining." She opened the manila envelope and removed a clear plastic sleeve. Inside it was a folded piece of gray fabric, worn thin at the edges. On the back, in faded blue ink, was the address of the shop and 2 words, "After midnight." Elias looked away first. That was his mistake. Nadia saw it. "My name is Nadia Rahman," she said. "I am a lawyer in Toronto. I work with families whose immigration records were damaged by people who knew exactly how to make the poor look guilty on paper." Elias heard Sophia's voice in his mind, soft but firm. The way she used to speak when he tried to avoid a difficult truth. "One day someone will come back for what we kept." He reached for the light switch then stopped. The room was already too bright. "Miss Rahman," he said carefully, "whatever your father told you, memory changes when a man is sick." Nadia's face did not move, but her fingers tightened around the photograph. "My father spent 25 years letting people believe he abandoned his wife and daughter. He worked kitchens, farms, and night shifts under different names. He never asked me for pity. But before he died last winter, he told me he had not run from us. He said one man in Windsor knew the beginning of the lie." Elias felt the old shop press in around him. The smell of mint aftershave. The coffee Sophia had always made too strong. the floorboards that still remembered footsteps from another night. "You should not be here," he whispered. Nadia leaned forward. "That is what every locked office, every missing file, and every frightened old man has told me." Before Elias could answer, a pair of headlights slid across the front window. A black sport utility vehicle slowed on the other side of Wyandotte Street, then stopped beneath the street lamp. Nadia noticed it too. Elias did not need to see the driver to know who had come early. Elias moved toward the front window before he could stop himself. The black sport utility vehicle sat across the street with its engine running, exhaust rising in pale clouds beneath the street lamp. The windshield was too dark to see through, but Elias knew the shape of that vehicle, the quiet arrogance of it, the way it waited without needing to announce itself. Nadia followed his gaze. "You know who that is?" Elias did not answer. He reached up and pulled the blinds lower, leaving only a narrow line of glass at the bottom. "Sit down, Miss Rahman. I would rather stand." "Then stand away from the window." She studied him for a second, then stepped back beside the barber chair. From her envelope, she removed 3 sheets of paper and laid them on the counter in a neat row. Elias recognized the language before he read the names. Temporary work permits, housing deductions, employment agreements. All the polite words people used when they wanted cruelty to look administrative. Nadia pointed to the first page. "My father worked for a subcontractor connected to Langford Property Services in 1999. So did at least 26 other immigrants from Bangladesh, Lebanon, Pakistan, El Salvador, and the Philippines. Their records all ended the same way. Abandoned employment, unknown address, non-compliant status." Elias closed his eyes. The words had aged, but the lie had not. "Those files were not mistakes," Nadia said. "Someone made them disappear on paper before they disappeared in real life. Your father did not disappear." The sentence came out before Elias could pull it back. Nadia went still. Outside, the vehicle remained in place. Elias gripped the edge of the counter until his knuckles lightened. I do not know what happened after." "After what?" He looked at the cracked mirror behind the chair. His own reflection looked smaller than it should have, like a man standing at the far end of a tunnel. "After he left here." Nadia slid the 3rd page forward. On the back was a photocopy of a handwritten note, the ink faded but clear. "Haddad. Wyandotte. Midnight." She tapped the name once. "He trusted you." Elias felt that more sharply than an accusation. Before he could answer, his phone rang inside the cardboard box. Daniel's name lit the screen. Elias let it ring twice, then answered. His son's voice came fast and tense. "Dad, where are you? Langford's people called me. They want the keys tonight, not tomorrow morning." Elias looked at Nadia. She did not blink. Daniel continued. "The buyer is coming in person. Victor Langford wants the building cleared before sunrise." The line went quiet in Elias's hand. Across the street, the black vehicle turned off its headlights. Elias finally understood. Victor Langford was not coming to buy the shop. He was coming to make sure nothing inside survived the night. Daniel arrived 12 minutes later, pushing through the snow with his coat half open and his face tight with anger. He knocked once, then used his own key before Elias could reach the door. The bell above the entrance gave a weak sound, the kind it had made since Daniel was a boy running in after school with salt on his boots and homework in his backpack. Now he stepped inside like a man entering a problem he wanted solved quickly. "Dad, what are you doing?" he said, then stopped when he saw Nadia beside the barber chair. His eyes moved from her face to the papers on the counter, then to the lowered blinds. "Who is this?" Elias did not answer fast enough. Nadia did. "My name is Nadia Rahman." Daniel's expression changed slightly, not with recognition, but with the discomfort of hearing a name that seemed to belong to a room he had never been allowed inside. "This is family business," Daniel said. "The sale closes in the morning." Nadia looked at him calmly. "That is exactly why I am here." Daniel turned to his father. "Please tell me this is not about another old customer. You promised me you were done. We need that money. You need that money." Elias heard the fear beneath his son's frustration. Daniel had spent years watching him grow older, slower, more stubborn. To Daniel, the shop was unpaid taxes, cracked pipes, insurance letters, and a father who refused help. To Elias, it was every name he had not said aloud. Nadia lifted one page from the counter. Did your mother ever mention Farid Rahman? Daniel gave a short, impatient breath. My mother mentioned a lot of people. She fed half this neighborhood. Daniel, Elias said. Came out sharper than he intended. Daniel stared at him. Then something passed across his face, a memory rising before he could bury it. Wait. He looked toward the back of the shop, where the old stairwell led down to the basement. When I was 16, I woke up one night and heard Mom crying in the kitchen. You told her to lower her voice. She said, you cannot shave a man's face, feed him soup, hide him under our floor, and then pretend he never existed. The shop went silent. Nadia's eyes moved to Elias, and the warmth left them completely. Daniel looked between them, his anger thinning into confusion. Dad, he said quietly, who was under our floor? Elias felt the years close around his chest. Outside, a car door opened across the street. Slow footsteps crossed the snowy road toward the shop. For the first time, Nadia stopped looking at Elias like a witness. She looked at him like a man on trial. The knock came before anyone inside the shop could decide whether to breathe. 3 soft taps, patient and controlled. Daniel turned toward the door, but Elias raised one hand. Do not open it. Too late. The lock clicked from the outside before Daniel touched it. Victor Langford stepped in as if the building already belonged to him, which on paper it nearly did. He was tall, silver-haired, and dressed in a dark wool coat that did not hold a single snowflake. His shoes were clean despite the slush outside. That was the first thing Nadia noticed. Men like him always arrived untouched by the weather everyone else had to walk through. Elias, Victor said warmly. Still awake. I admire that. His eyes moved to Daniel, then to Nadia, then to the document spread across the counter. The warmth faded only by a degree, but the room felt colder. Miss Rahman, he said. Toronto is a long drive for a closed barbershop. Nadia did not answer. Daniel looked at her, startled. You know her. Victor smiled. I know lawyers who spend too much time disturbing old records. He stepped farther inside, glancing at the cracked mirror behind the chair, the packed boxes, the bare wall where the citizenship photo had hung. I came for the keys. Demolition preparation begins early. There are liability issues. Vacant buildings attract problems. This building is not vacant, Elias said. Victor looked at him with almost fatherly disappointment. Elias, you signed. Your son witnessed. Everyone benefits when people honor what they put on paper. Nadia picked up one of the copied work permits. Some papers are built to hide what really happened. Victor's eyes settled on her. Careful. Accusations are expensive in Canada. Daniel stepped forward. What is going on? Why does she think my mother hit someone in our basement? For the first time, Victor's expression changed. Not much. Just enough. His gaze flicked to the old floor vent near the back wall, then to the mirror. Elias saw it and felt the truth strike harder than memory. Victor had not come early for the keys. He had come early for whatever Sophia might have left behind. Old buildings are dangerous, Victor said quietly. They hold things that should have been cleared out years ago. Nadia's voice was calm. So do old men. The silence after that was so sharp even Daniel stopped moving. Victor placed his gloved hand on the counter. Midnight, Elias. After that, penalties begin. Then he turned and walked out without looking back. Elias waited until the vehicle pulled away. Then he locked the door, pulled the blinds all the way down and said, Your father did not disappear from Windsor. I helped him disappear. Elias did not sit down when he began. He stood behind the barber chair with both hands resting on its worn brown leather, as if the chair were the only thing keeping him in the present. It was October of 1999, he said. Rain all week. Cold rain, not snow yet. Your father came after midnight, when Sophia and I were counting the cash drawer. Nadia stayed still, but Daniel lowered himself onto one of the packed boxes. Elias looked toward the basement door. Farid was soaked through. His coat was torn at the sleeve. He kept saying he only needed a phone. Not money. Not food. A phone. He wanted to tell his wife he had not left her. Nadia pressed her lips together, And for a moment Elias saw the child she had been, waiting beside a window for a father everyone said had chosen to vanish. He told us he worked at a site outside Windsor. Men from 5 countries in one house. 12-hour shifts. Rent taken from their pay. Fees taken from their pay. Food taken from their pay. When they asked for what they were owed, someone reminded them their papers could become a problem. Daniel whispered, "Langford." Elias nodded once. "Your mother wanted to call a church in London that helped workers. I wanted to call no one. I had a mortgage. I had a son. I still spoke English like every sentence had to cross an ocean first. I knew what men like Victor did to people who could not afford lawyers." He looked at Nadia. But Sophia opened the basement door. The room seemed to fill with the ghost of that decision. Elias could still see Farid sitting on the bottom step, wrapped in Sophia's blue blanket, hands around a bowl of lentil soup. On the second night, Elias cut his hair short and shaved his beard so he would not be recognized easily. Farid looked in the mirror afterward and cried without making a sound. On the third night, Sophia packed him bread, apples, and Daniel's old winter hat. They planned to drive him before sunrise. Then Victor came to the block. With 2 men in suits, asking questions with smiles that were not questions at all. "I got scared," Elias said. "Farid saw it before I said anything. He told me he would leave through the back and find his own way." Nadia's voice broke for the first time. "And you let him?" Elias nodded. The next morning, the paper said Farid Rahman had abandoned his job, his address, and his family. I knew it was a lie. I let that lie grow old with me. Daniel looked at his father as if seeing a stranger wearing his face. Nadia reached into her envelope and pulled out one more photograph. This one showed Farid years later, thinner, older, alive. On the back, in careful handwriting, were 4 words. Sophia kept the proof. The 4 words on the back of the photograph changed the air inside the shop. Sophia kept the proof. Daniel took the picture from Nadia with both hands, as if it might fall apart if he held it like ordinary paper. His mother's name had not been spoken that way since the funeral, not as a memory, not as a wound, but as a door. Elias stared at the photograph and shook his head once. "No," he said. "Sophia would have told me." Nadia's eyes stayed on him. Maybe she tried. Daniel looked toward the cracked mirror behind the barber chair. The glass had been there longer than he had been alive, wide and heavy, with a dark wooden frame Elias refused to replace even after the corner split. "Before Mom died," Daniel said slowly, "she made me promise something strange. She said if I ever sold the shop, I was not supposed to let anyone take the mirror until you looked behind it." Elias turned to his son. The color had left his face. "She said that." Daniel nodded. "I thought it was grief. I thought she was worried about old family photos or cash." Nadia stepped toward the mirror. "Then we look." Elias did not move, so Daniel did. He found a screwdriver in the bottom drawer beneath the register. The same drawer where Sophia used to keep peppermint candy for children who waited quietly. The first screw came loose with a dry scrape. Then the second. When the frame shifted forward, dust fell in a soft gray line onto the counter. Behind the mirror was not bare wall. There was a small square of plywood, painted the same color as everything else, with a brass key taped to the edge. Elias whispered Sophia's name like an apology. Daniel unlocked the panel. Inside was a tin box wrapped in a blue kitchen towel. The towel made Elias close his eyes. Sophia had used it for bread, soup bowls, and once 25 years ago, to dry rainwater from Farid Rahman's hair. Nadia opened the box carefully. Inside were folded contracts, photographs, photocopied work permits, and a small black cassette tape. On top was a notebook with 27 names written in Sophia's careful hand. Farid Rahman was number 9. Beneath the notebook lay a sealed envelope addressed to Nadia. Her hands trembled only after she saw her own name. She opened it and read the first line aloud. "If you are reading this, your father did not leave you." No one spoke. Then Daniel lifted the cassette tape and turned it toward the light. On the label, in faded ink, Sophia had written 2 words. Victor confessed. Daniel found an old cassette player in the bottom cabinet where Elias had kept broken clippers, spare cords, and things he always meant to repair. The plastic was yellowed, and the play button resisted his thumb before sinking with a tired click. For 2 seconds there was only static. Then a younger Victor Langford filled the shop, his voice smooth, amused, and careless in the way powerful men sound when they believe no one important is listening. He spoke about workers who could not complain, names that could be changed, rent that could be deducted twice, papers that could be misplaced, families that would eventually stop asking questions. Nadia stood with Sophia's letter in one hand and her father's photograph in the other, and all the strength in her face seemed to harden into something colder than grief. Elias watched Daniel listen to the tape, and that was almost worse. His son had grown up believing his mother was gentle because she was kind. Now he was learning she had also been brave, and that his father had survived by being quiet beside her courage. The tape ended with a click that sounded final. Then Elias's phone rang. Victor's name did not appear, only a private number, but everyone in the room knew who it was. Elias answered and put the call on speaker. Victor did not waste time. You have until midnight to turn over the keys. If you delay possession, your son becomes responsible for penalties under the agreement he witnessed. I would hate to see Daniel suffer because you are confused by old memories. Daniel looked at the contract on the counter as if it had become a trap with his signature inside it. Nadia whispered, "He is using your son to keep you silent." Elias looked at Sophia's towel, the tin box, the notebook of 27 names. For 25 years he had told himself silence was protection. Protection for Sophia. Protection for Daniel. Protection for the life they had built in a country that had not always made room for them. But silence had not protected Farid's daughter. It had not protected the other names in Sophia's book. It had only protected the men who knew how to turn fear into paperwork. Elias picked up the old barber shears from the counter. Daniel stepped forward. "Dad, please. We could lose everything." Elias looked at his son. "No. We already lost too much by keeping it." He placed the sale agreement flat on the counter and cut it once through the middle. The sound was small, but everyone heard it. Then he turned the sign back to open, took Sophia's letter, and called the number she had written at the bottom. At 3:12 in the morning, Haddad's barbershop opened again, not for haircuts but for witnesses. By 6:18 in the morning, the snow had stopped, but no one had left Haddad's barbershop. The first person to arrive was the reporter Sophia had named in her letter, now older, wrapped in a gray winter coat, holding a recorder with both hands like he understood he had been trusted with something fragile. Then came a woman from a legal clinic in downtown Windsor, followed by two former workers whose names were in Sophia's notebook. One had driven from London before sunrise. The other stood outside for almost 10 minutes before stepping in, as if the doorway itself remembered him. Daniel made coffee in the back room without speaking. Nadia sat in the barber chair with her father's photograph in her lap, reading Sophia's letter again and again, stopping at the same sentence each time. Your father wanted you to grow up without fear, not without love. At 7:03, Victor Langford arrived with two men in construction jackets and a folder under his arm. He stopped when he saw the people gathered behind the glass. For a moment his face showed the one thing money had never taught him to hide: surprise. Elias opened the door before Victor could knock. He did not raise his voice. He did not accuse him with anger. He simply handed the cassette tape, the notebook, and the copied contracts to Nadia, then turned to the reporter and said, "Farid Rahman did not abandon his family. Men with money wrote that lie. Men with fear repeated it. And men like me stayed quiet too long." Victor said something about lawyers, agreements, and damages, but his words no longer filled the room. They fell onto the floor with the dust from the mirror. Nadia stood slowly. She did not look victorious. She looked tired in the way people look when the truth finally arrives too late to give back what was taken. She reached into her envelope and gave Elias one last photograph. Farid Rahman, older, standing beside a small garden in Scarborough, smiling with one hand raised against the sun. On the back, in careful handwriting, he had written, "Tell the barber I survived because he opened the door." Elias read it twice. His hand shook only the second time. By noon the sign came down. Daniel helped his father carry it inside instead of letting the crew throw it away. Nadia left with the evidence, Sophia's letter, and her father's name returned to her hole. Elias locked the shop for the last time, but he did not feel erased anymore. Some places close. Some truths do not. And sometimes one door kept open for a single night is enough to let an entire life step back into the light.